Welcome back. To preview Saturday's Premier League match on the opening weekend of the season between Bournemouth and Aston Villa. Pascal, it's obviously a massive game and massive season for Bournemouth, first season in Premier League. Can they stay up this season?
I think they've got a decent chance. They were by far and away the most exciting team to watch in the Championship last season. In the end, only a late goal from Sheffield Wednesday at Watford, got them the title. It looked like they were going to finish second, but they were brilliant to watch last season. The way Eddie Howe plays his football down there is so exciting to watch. The fullbacks get forward, the midfielders score goals. He's got Callum Wilson, very exciting England under-21 international. He's very quick, Wilson, but I think for them this season it's whether they are a small club, Bournemouth. The rise they've had under Howe is absolutely brilliant, but for them this season it's because they're going to rely, they have made some good signings, but predominantly it's going to be about how their players who did so well last season adjust to life in the Premier League. I mentioned Wilson, he got loads of pace, but he's not going to get as many chances this year. He missed some, he had some bad misses last season, great finishes as well, but he's not going to get as many chances against tougher defenders. His pace will certainly worry defenders, but players like him, Matt Ritchie, who he didn't win the award for the Championship Best Player, but he was the best player in the Championship last season. 17 goals, 15 assists. He was absolutely brilliant for Bournemouth. It's going to be tougher for him this season, but you look at the players they've signed. I think Sylvain Distin, certainly, an old head to go in there and sort of, loads of Premier League experience that he's got. So that's a good signing for him. But then the other end of the scale, they've signed Tyrone Mings, who brilliant in his sort of breakout season for Ipswich last year. He came in, but 2 years ago he was working as a mortgage advisor, playing non-league football, and he's now in the Premier League, and there's a lot of pressure on him because £8 million for a player who only had one full season really in the Football League. So much pressure going to be on him, but he's got the attributes, he's very quick, very athletic, very tall, but it'll be up to him to, play very well this season. The other players they've signed, Atsu didn't do great for Everton, did he, last season? Didn't do much. Joshua King from Blackburn, he had an okay season, scored a hat-trick in the FA Cup. I think it was against Stoke, I think it was. He showed glimpses, but yeah, the main thing for them is going to be how their players, handle that step up to the Premier League.
Yeah, I think that would be the worry for me, Bournemouth, for getting the balance right between defending and attacking, because obviously such a good, entertaining team last season, but you can't really do that in the Premier League because better teams will pick you off if you try and go forward all the time. And it's been a decent build-up to the season, pre-season fixtures. I tend to look at those, to see how players are settling in and stuff, and they've done quite well. They beat Philadelphia Union, and they've had some mixed results. They lost to Cardiff, lost to Salisbury as well in there, and beat Yeovil. And last time out they drew with Hoffenheim, who are a decent, a very decent German team. So to do that is good. I mean, goals scored, goals conceded, and to get the fitness is obviously the most important thing in pre-season. And like you say, it's going to be a massive campaign just to see whether they can settle into this style of football, because the jump from the Championship to the Premier League is massive, as we all know.
I think the Eddie Howe situation is certainly very interesting as well. He undoubtedly one of the most exciting young managers, just the way he plays football, the way, and the players all rave about him as well. And I think it'll be interesting. We don't know, obviously who's going to be the first man to go, but plenty of managers will be sacked over the course of the season. And if Howe's Bournemouth are doing well, there's going to be interest in him, and it's whether the lure of a bigger club, say, I think Everton, I've heard little chatters that apparently he's a big Everton fan, Eddie Howe. So, say, Martinez, he's obviously a young, exciting manager as well, but say it didn't really work out for Martinez last year. If it's the same again and Everton do struggle, Everton might look to Howe and think, here's our man. They employed Martinez, who did so well in his, first couple of seasons. But if Martinez goes, it's whether Howe decides, if he wants to stay with the Bournemouth project and make them, an established Premier League team, because he dropped down to League Two to manage them, and he's got them up through the leagues, and it's whether he sticks with this now or if the lure of a Premier League club is just too much for him. It would certainly be interesting, but if he's doing well, I think there will certainly be loads of offers coming for him.
Yeah, he's obviously a very talented manager. And moving on to Villa, another team that have got a manager in there who's come in and did really well. Tim Sherwood come in and kept them up. There was a stage with Paul Lambert where it looked like they were heading down. Couldn't find the back of the net for anything. Were losing games and lots of doom and gloom. Tim Sherwood came in fairness, a lot of people aren't fans of Tim Sherwood, the way he approaches the game, but did really well. Eventually finished in 17th, 3 points above the relegation zone. I think staying in the league was the name of the game. The fact they finished 17th is not too important, but they lost 20 games last season. 20 of 38 is a lot of games to lose, only won 10. It's all about a team of Villa's history, and they'll be wanting to push higher up the table. Obviously, it's been a lot of transfer business, and I think the fans just want to see a bit more, push for the top. But, if they can finish mid-table, that'd be a very good season, but you feel like they're going to be battling maybe bottom half. I think they'll stay in the league. There's been a lot of talk of maybe them going down. I think they will stay in the league, but can they make that press up the table? I think it's the main thing for the fans.
It's going to be certainly very difficult for them. They've lost, their two best players from last year, Benteke to Liverpool, Delph to Man City. That's a huge loss for them. They have signed, some players that, we know about. Micah Richards, from his history back in England, played at Fiorentina, did okay in Italy, I think, but he's come back to England and he's been made captain by Sherwood, so that shows a lot of faith in him to be made captain. You look at some of the other players they've signed. Ayew, he's got some good history playing in Europe, but we've talked about Bournemouth making the step up, but the step up to the Premier League from another European league is very big as well. So players like him and Rudiger Stead as well, I think it'd be interesting to see who gets the nod as the main striker now. Benteke's gone. They haven't signed Adebayor yet, but they've been very heavily linked with him. And say Adebayor doesn't come in and Gested sees a lot of games, it'd be very, very interesting to see how he gets on, because in the Championship last season he was one of the best strikers. He's an absolute sort of brute in the air. He just fights players off. He's brilliant in winning headers and setting up teammates as well with his back to goal. But it's like I said about Wilson, whether he can make the step up, because these two strikers, Wilson and Gested, two of the best strikers in the Championship last season, but they're going to come up against much, much better defenders. They're going to get less chances this year, so it's whether they can make that step up. But for Villa, I agree with you. I think it'll be very difficult for them this season to push anywhere near the top half. I think they'll be around that relegation battle again, because they've lost their two best players, and there's no reason to say why should they be that much better, really. I don't think.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. And obviously these two have never met in the Premier League before. Obviously Bournemouth have never been there, but they did meet last season, didn't they, in the Cup? Villa Park. Villa won that game 2-1. Tight game though, wasn't it, overall? You can remember it well. And that sort of game, I don't know if that's going to have too much bearing on it. Players have gone in, players have gone out. The squads are different from last season. And I mentioned it's going to be an interesting game. It's probably one of the tougher ones to call this weekend, isn't it? Because you never know how Bournemouth are going to fare, especially at home. So, what's your score prediction for this one?
Yeah, I think you mentioned that game in the FA Cup last season. Bournemouth went there, and I think most people thought they'll probably win this because they were doing so well in the Championship at the time. Villa was really struggling. You thought, right, Bournemouth will go there and win. The first half was pretty even. Bournemouth couldn't quite get a goal, and then in the second half, Villa pulled away, ended up 2-1 winners. But for this game on the opening weekend of the season, I think it's certainly one of the hardest ones to call. It should be one of the most competitive out of any of the 10 games, and I'm going to have to say a draw. I'm going to go 2-2.
2-2, yeah, I'm actually going to agree with the draw. It's going to be a tight game. I think it'll be a little more tighter than that. They're going 2-2. I'm actually going to go 1-1. Neither of us can see either team winning this game. Thanks for joining us.